It is just a huge, huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. Chad Duplantis all the way from Fort Worth, Texas. He received his DDS degree from the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio Dental School in 1999. He continued with postdoctorate training at Baylor College of Dentistry, earning a certificate in advanced education in general dentistry in 2000. He also applied for and will receive his fellowship degree from the Academy of General Dentistry this July. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
He has been in private practice since 2000 in the North Fort Worth, Texas area. In private practice, he treats all ages with an emphasis on restorative and aesthetic dentistry. He has been a member of several aesthetic and restorative continuums, and most recently, Spear Education Study Club. Dr. Duplantis has always had an interest in high-tech dentistry and has been incorporating CAD/CAM technology in his practice since 2004. Formerly a CEREC user, he is now a user of the 3M True Definition Oral Scanner and the Glidewell Laboratories TS150 mill. Dr. Duplantis has also written several articles regarding digital dentistry for various dental publications. He has helped 3M on various projects regarding the scanner and also a member of the panel of experts on the website TrueDefinitionDoctors.com. He is also a clinical consultant for Glidewell Laboratories. In his spare time, he enjoys traveling, spending time with his wife Ellen and his children Austin and Avid. He is an avid cyclist, enjoys shooting, sporting clays, and loves to be outdoors. So you live in Dallas, Fort Worth, but you named your kid Austin. Does that mean you really wish you lived in Austin? Was that Freudian?
That's where we went to school, man. You know, we have to give the one of the best towns in Texas some honor.
So which town do you like living in more, Austin or Dallas Fort Worth?
You know, my Dallas friends would get upset by this, but I like living in Fort Worth the best. So even over Austin. Austin has a lot of college memories, maybe a little bit too much fun down there. So it's a nice getaway, but Fort Worth's definitely a better place to live, in my opinion.
And Texas is right now the #1 hottest growing, expanding economy in the whole nation.
Yeah, we have a lot going on here, and the real estate's relatively inexpensive, and we have you know, a lot of room for expansion, lower taxes, no state income tax. So it's a nice place to live. Feel pretty blessed to be here.
Well, I'm so excited that you came on the show. I mean, you're a hot speaker with the Catapult Group. My gosh, 3M. It's very hard to get be an advisor to 3M. I mean, that's one of the hallmark companies in dentistry. So I want to start out with just that first thing that just caught everybody on surprise. Probably most people don't even know that Glidewell has a chairside milling machine.
Right.
So can we start with that?
Sure.
What is the TS150, and what made you? CEREC probably has 15,000 users in the United States. What made you go to the TS150 with Glidewell?
Well, it's kind of a long story. I started with CEREC in 2004, and a little background on my practice. I have a partner in the practice as well that's about 15 years older than I am. So when we went digital, I embraced the technology, and he didn't quite embrace the technology. So, you know, we spent about $104,000 on the machine in 2004. And when I found myself using it a lot, him not using it as much, I started steering away from it. And I had some failures, and I won't say that it was the system, because it is a great system. You know, the CEREC has had great technology for a very, very long time, but it was more the user. I think I tested the limits of the technology, and after 3 or 4 years and more failures than I'd like to see, I kind of abandoned it, and I still had this yearning to get back into digital dentistry. So in 2007, 3M came out with the Lava COS chairside scanner, and they invited me to join and start using that. And I did for a while, but there was no chairside mill component. And so I'd always wanted that chairside mill component, so I stopped using just the scanner. And then in 2012, 3M approached me again with their new True Definition scanner, which had the capabilities to mill restorations chairside, but there were a couple of different mills that were available, and one of them happened to be the TS150, which is now Glidewell's mill, and it's a relatively inexpensive option if you want to mill and you want to scan. And so, I started using it shortly thereafter, and I think that was my gateway back into digital. And I've been pretty much scanning every restorative restoration I do in my office, every indirect restoration. Uh, been scanning almost exclusively for 5 years now, and haven't looked back once. So that is how Glidewell's mill kind of came to market.
So what's the difference in price between the two units? I mean, the Cerac machine, the whole bells and whistles. That's a lot of money. It's probably what, $140. Um,
That's what I would say for the whole Cerac get up is about 140 is what I'd guess, and depending upon what capabilities you want to add. I mean, a lot of people that have Cerac now are adding cone beam, and they're adding a dry mill so they can mill zirconia, which requires an additional oven as well. Um, if you go with, you can get into scanning and milling in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 if you go with one of the other options. The TS150 is actually changing course a little bit. Glidewell introduced a new electric mill. So to answer your question, with the TS150, if you buy a mill, you're looking at about, just for the mill alone, let's say 45 to 50 for the mill alone. However, they've come out with an electric option that requires no additional air setup in the practice, and I think that mill is going to run in the 30 to 35 range on the high end. There's talks of it being even lower, but I don't think Glidewell's come out with their pricing yet. But it's going to be a pretty phenomenal addition to the dental office.
and then what would the true definition scanner? Because I don't they have like the basic is like what, 17 grand. Then there's upgrades all the way to what?
That's it, 17 grand. So if
That's
you
the whole
want to,
kit and caboodle, all the upgrades, fancy stuff.
right? I mean, you have to have data plans, which you do with almost all of the scanners. There's a couple that don't require it, but 17 grand is what you're looking at for
Now, when you say the
a
data
scanner.
plan, that's the monthly fee that you have to pay going forward.
Correct.
And what's the
Correct.
data plan for the 3M True Definition Oral Scanner? About how much is that?
They have two options. There's one that's 199 and there's one that's 329 a month. And you get different capabilities within the two. Um, I would love to see just one data plan. I personally only use the lesser of the two, which is the 199 data plan, and it allows me to do everything that I need to do. If there's something that it wouldn't, for instance, if you do Invisalign in your office and you use the scanner to scan Invisalign cases, you're looking at the 329 data plan. But for everything that I do, the 199 works just fine.
I just found that TS150. I googled that, and it says it's. I guess you said it's Glidewell, but
iOS Technologies.
yeah. Do they own iOS Technologies, or they just?
I'm not. I believe they do. I believe that iOS Technologies is a division of Glidewell.
Okay.
But
Because it says the TS150 chairside mill provides convenient milling that could reduce your turnaround time to less than 2 hours. Is fast, efficient, affordable, open source milling unit. Features a powerful air-driven 150,000 RPM spindle and uses an orbital precision milling strategy to provide excellent marginal integrity. But I also noticed that they list it works with the 3M True Definition scanner, but they also list the iTero intraoral scanner. Did you look at iTero too?
I have looked at iTero. I've looked at all of them. I had the privilege of beta testing the 3M scanner. So in 2012, that's when I continued using the 3M scanner, and it does everything as the others do as well. As far as looking at the iTero, have I looked at it? Yes, I have. I just have no need to change at this point in time. When you look at scanners on the market right now, we used to have to differentiate between open and closed systems, and none of the systems are really closed anymore. Even Cerac has opened their system up to a certain extent. So, you got to look at price. You got to look at accuracy. They're all going to be extremely accurate, so that's not an issue as it once was. You got to look at data plans and the ongoing pricing. And you got to look at the capabilities and the success rates that people have had with the different scanners. So there's not a bad one out there, in my opinion, that I've seen so far. Um, it's just that, I've just had no reason to change at this point in time.
I know a lot of people that got into chairside milling that now they just actually use the scanning component and send it to the lab because
Absolutely.
that when they started doing the chairside, all these amazing hot speakers that talk about chairside milling, how they do all their crowns in about an hour. But there's a lot of people that in their office with their assistant, with their gear, that 1 hour appointment was more like 3 hours. And the reason I think the most exciting thing about the scanner is magnification is the key to being quality dentist. Everybody that puts their hands in a mouth, assistant, dentist, hygienist, has to wear magnification. The endodontists all use a microscope to check their clean canals. But man, when the labs repeatedly tell you from everywhere I've talked to that impressions coming in are averaging 6% remakes, scans coming in are about 1% remakes, because you see your impression 40, 50 times larger on the screen as opposed to sitting there with my loops on looking at my little purple Impergum, which isn't really a good color to look into. I mean, I'm surprised Impergum isn't black. And so when you scan that, I mean, because think about if 5% of your crowns came in for a seat, and instead of having to try to get it to fit for half an hour, then re-impress, I mean, what does that cost you when a patient comes in for half an hour and all you leave is with a re-impress? The patient's not happy, and that had a lot of cost to it. So if you really did reduce your remakes from 6% to 1%, my God, that would be worth a lot of money.
Well, and I always tell people this, and this is an honest God truth. Since I've been scanning, in 2012, I started, July of 2012. So let's say 5 years exclusively scanning. I've taken 3 traditional impressions in 5 years for restorative indirect dentistry. Now, I've still taken some for removable, but 3 impressions in 5 years. When I send something to the lab, like you said, you blow it up 40 to 50 times. You know before it leaves your office if it's going to work or not. With an impression, I'd hope that you would know. I mean, I didn't have a lot of remakes, but in those 5 years, I've sent 5 units back to the laboratory, and I can tell you that every single one of them was my fault because I either sent a restoration in that I probably shouldn't have sent off. I've dropped a restoration and broke it, so that's neither the fault of the lab or the scanner, it's the fault of me. 2 of them I've screwed up bites on. And the other one was 2 weeks ago, and it was a live and learn type of thing where I tried to do a screw retained implant bridge, and the abutment, I mean, the implants weren't placed perfectly parallel to one another, so it's not going to work. So, five cases that I've sent back. So my remakes have dropped drastically, because I would say before, I mean, I'm just throwing this out there, maybe I was sending back 5 cases a year. And I've gone down to 5 cases.
Well, whenever you have to
5
do a
years.
remake, though, I think as an official policy, you should blame it on at least the lab or the assistant. I would never take.
Oh, I of course I try
would
to
never
do that,
take
but
full
in full
responsibility
disclosure,
for
I
that.
can take as much blame too. So
So
when the assistant's sitting right next to me, it's always her fault. But then again, she pays me back for that later.
Well, you know what I always do with Jan for 30 years is we it's amazing how dentists, they spend their whole life with that 3/4 inch mirror, and you can buy yourself a 2-inch mirror or a 2.5-inch mirror, 2.25-inch mirror. And before I impress, I always hand it to have Jan look at it. But when she's sitting on the other side and she puts that 2-inch mirror down there, she's can always find these aren't going to draw if it's a bridge or something's wrong. But just having your assistant look at it. And my policy was always with an impression that when we got done and I approved the impression, I handed it to Jan. If Jan vetoed it, I didn't even want her to talk to me. I just wanted her to throw it in the trash and, the end of it. So I like that having your assistant get involved in, is this good? You know what I mean?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that's one of the beauties. One of my favorite cases that I ever did. I did scanned a 6-unit bridge a couple of years ago. And, that's one of those things where you kind of take your life into your hands when you go back there to seat it, because it could go really well or it could go really bad. And my assistant came in. I'm sitting in the office. I hadn't even gotten through 2 sips of coffee, and she says the bridge is ready to go. And I went back there. It was a scanned bridge, manufactured digitally, and it just dropped right into place.
Now, if you're... Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying, I mean, we're just seeing great successes with it,
But if you're
limited seat times.
paying $199 a month for the data plan, but you're also getting a reduction on your Crown and Bridge bill, your lab charge, does it give you a discount sending in a scan as opposed to a model? Because when the labs get a model, they got to pay a human to pour it up, trim the die, the whole 9 yards. Some labs are giving a discount on the.
Absolutely.
What lab are you using?
The majority of my stuff, I'm using two labs. I use, Glidewell for mostly zirconia restorations, and then I use a local lab for my really aesthetic, higher quality restorations. A lab called TechSource Dental out of Plano.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, someone, another podcaster used those guys.
they're a phenomenal lab. Pay real attention to detail, but they do offer, they're a digital lab, so they offer a discounted price for digital restorations. And what I tell everybody, when I'm lecturing, is that if your lab does not offer you some sort of a discount, or there's not if there's not a set fee for digital restorations or a set fee for analog restorations, then your lab doesn't get digital. You need to go to a lab that understands digital. The problem with a lot of these labs that are out there that are kind of trying to embrace it is, they're charging an excessive amount for a restoration, and then a doctor sends in a digital scan and they're charging the same amount. That's not worth it to the doctor. So in my mind, the labs have to offer some sort of incentive. But not only do they have to offer a price incentive, I think that the labs need to offer a turnaround incentive, because there's no way that these restorations should take 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. They should be able to be turned around within a week.
Nice. Yeah, I've had two guests that use TechSource Dental, and I think the other one wasn't even in Texas, was far away. So when you think when when I got out of school in '87, it was the dental materials revolution. It was the revolutions in adhesive dentistry with Bob Ibsen and Bisco and all those guys, which gave us the tools for the cosmetic revolution, bleaching, bonding, veneers. And then in
Sure.
the '90s, it was the computers, and we had the digital revolution. What are you most passionate about in the digital revolution that we're living through right now? What's got you excited?
I think implants. I think implants are the future of, are a big part of the future of the digital revolution. And the way that I always look at this is I'll use my partner as an example. My partner he's been out 15 years longer than I have. He's not extremely computer savvy. It's not that he doesn't like computers, but he just doesn't want to practice dentistry with computers until we started restoring implants digitally. And once we started doing that, and he saw the ease of just restoring implants digitally, he was all in. I think he's scanned 3 implants this morning. Our practice's implant production has gone through the roof, and it's not because, we like to think it's because we're better than the average Joe dentist, but it's because patients come here, from surgeons. They get their implants scanned. It's become such an easy and seamless process that what surgeons are doing is if patients show up to their office, they're sending them over here because the workflow is so smooth. And we find treating a lot more implants because the workflow is so proven, it's so smooth, it's so efficient, it's just easy. So that's the restorative aspect of it. And now what we're doing digitally is I'm scanning. The surgeon that I work with is taking a CBCT. We're incorporating that into co-diagnostic software. We're planning huge cases. I mean, we just planned tomorrow Friday, we're placing 14 units in a patient, full mouth restoration, full mouth rehab, and it was planned entirely digitally. So I think that's the future of digital dentistry, and I think that's where this is headed.
So you're not placed them, you're working with a surgeon?
I do work with a surgeon.
And is that a oral surgeon or a periodontist or?
Both. Majority of it's periodontist.
George's very. And what's the name of the? So you didn't buy a CBCT then?
I did not.
Yeah,
No.
and that's what I tell those kids. Is I mean, my cell phone. I mean, I started off with a Motorola flip phone, then a Nokia, and I mean, I've never had a cell phone that I've kept 5 years. I don't think I'd want to buy $100,000 iPhone and then 5 years later went the new model. I mean, you just need access to a CBCT. If you're
Absolutely.
periodontist and oral surgeon have one, why are you buying? I mean, you have to do a lot of scans a month to make that ROI. But what's the CBCT code diagnosis software? What's the
You
brand
know,
name on that?
there's several out there, but the one that we use most is Co-Diagnostics, and it's Dental Wings, which is now part of Straumann. Where I don't know exactly who's part of who, but Dental Wings and Straumann have come out with Co-Diagnostics implant software, and I'm going to give a little bit. So if anybody out there does not have access to Co-Diagnostic software, which there's several brands, there's a great company, and you've probably heard of them, Implant Concierge out of San Antonio.
Right.
And so the TechSource does not have the Co-Diagnostic software, but TechSource, myself, Dr. Bedichek, the periodontist, and we all merged with Co-Diagnostics for this one case, and Co-Diagnostics planned it for us. And man, you want to talk about a fine-tuned machine? Implant Concierge is a fine-tuned machine. They really helped all of us out in this case.
You know what? I would like to podcast interviewing. Who's the head over there at Implant?
I can get that information for you and email it to you. I don't know who the head is. I know, Google them. It'll pop up. I believe it was started by three doctors.
You're probably like the 10th person on out of 750 shows that mention Implant Concierge. So they're obviously doing something really right. And I found that at dentalwings.com. And you think that's owned by Straumann?
They are in part. They are together. They actually have a scanner that's out together too. The Dental Wings Straumann intraoral scanner, or whatever. If you look up the Dental Wings intraoral scanner, that's developed by or owned by Dental Wings and Straumann.
Nice. Yeah. So my homies are driving to work, so they can't really take notes. So what I do is I just retweet that last tweet. So they're at dentalwings.com. So you follow me at Howard Farran. I just retweeted their last tweet. What is your Twitter?
At Dr. Duplantis.
There he is, that handsome devil. Oh, I've already retweeted one of your. When I sent you an email, I retweeted one. I'll retweet another one. Family Cycling Digital Dentistry CAD/CAM Dentistry at Fossil Creek Dentistry. So you really like the Co-Diagnostic software. You didn't buy a CBCT. That's smart. So implants have got you pretty excited though, huh?
They do. And just to touch upon, you asked about buying a CBCT. I know a bunch of general dentists that have them. And I don't think that that's a bad idea. But for me, like you said, why do I need one? Why do I need to go make that investment? I'm not placing implants, and I don't have the time nor the want to place implants. Maybe I will down the road if things slow down, and I'm not knocking people who do. I think that's great. But why do I need a CBCT when the surgeon that I use has one, and every surgeon that I use has one? But there's also all these imaging centers that are popping up all over the place, and there's in Fort Worth, I believe there's even a dental imaging center. Well, you send a patient in, they'll take your CBCT, they'll take intraoral photographs, they'll do whatever you need them to. So,
well, I started a thread yesterday, and I thought it would just explode in views, but there was a what I consider an earth-shattering paper that was published a couple of years ago that was kind of flying under the radar regarding it's called Bacterial Signatures in Thrombus Aspirates of Patients with Myocardial Infarction. And we had the doctor in Texas How to Beat the Heart Attack Gene, and it's the Baylor Dolene centers, and they're really exploding. They've really got a lot of information on preventing heart attacks. But I published under endodontics, but they're showing that when you go into an acute, a heart attack, that 30% of the time they find 5 bugs from gum disease, and 70% of the time they find bugs from a failing root canal that has a periapical radiolucency. And the naturalists and the holistic doctors, they've been touting this stuff for 2 or 3 years, but when you start talking to endodontists and they start taking this CBCT of existing root canals, especially if you're in the heart attack zone, like a male, like if you're a short, fat, bald grandpa male over 50, you're not going to live forever. But when they start doing CBCTs of these existing root canals, it's amazing how many of them you find that are still have periapical infection. And since the nerve's been taken out, and then there's some people saying that, dentists are the only ones that try to salvage and embalm dead organs. And I think if that really takes roots, there's going to be a lot more CBCTs of existing root canals. Then when you talk to a rhinologist, there's a guy in town here who says people come in here and say they've had allergies for 20 years. And they put a camera up in their nose and some root canal is leaking into the sinus, and it's been leaking for 20 years. And there's white fungi gunk all over the sinus. And he says some of these things are just, so there's a lot of failed root canals that on a PA that we're not seeing it. And the nerve's been taken out and the patient's not feeling it. But I think, in fact, I'm almost to the point now where once you turn 50 years old, when I turned 50, the doctor said, okay, now that you're 50, you got to get your first colonoscopy, and then you got to do that every 5 years so you die. You got to get a brain MRI, because all the brain cancers that kill you in your 60s are just the size of a pea when you're 50. But I'm almost starting to think to add that to the heart attack deal is that when you're 50, you go to an endodontist and get all your root canals CBCT'd to make sure they're all working and fine with no infection. What do you think of all that?
Well, the first thing that I think is what you're telling me is if all this comes to fruition and CBCTs are finding that, I think that we could see that CBCT may eventually become the standard of care in root canal therapy. I think that it is going to become the standard of care in implant placement. But I also see what I'm seeing a lot in my practice is that when you're looking at diagnosing a root canal, you've got to look at an implant as a viable option for that patient as well. And so are we going to see? I've seen that my retreatment diagnoses have dropped off drastically, and I've started pushing more towards implants rather than retreats if there's not the shadow of a doubt that the retreat's going to be effective. And I question what it's going to do for initial treatments on endodontic therapy if we start seeing a higher rate of failures from what we're seeing in CBCTs. Does that make sense?
It does, and it's this oral health continuum connecting the. Evidently, it's the bigger issue even among the MDs, because they broke up into 58 specialties. The dentists have 9, and it seems like every MD I meet that oral systemic, the whole body continuum. I mean, there's guys who their whole life do kidneys and never have talked to anybody who does lungs, hearts, livers, teeth, brain. You know what I mean? So they're all starting to. I think that's a part of the revolution we're in now, is that all these 58 specialties are all realizing, this at the end of the day, it's just one human, and all this stuff is connected. And it's amazing. It's just amazing. You remember going back in the day, way back in the day, when LSU started doing artificial joints,
Right.
And they started doing artificial joints, and the problem was they started to break down. But where it was noticed is that they were finding these parts of that artificial joint in people's kneecaps and their elbows, and there's macrophages trying to eat it. I mean, that thing was showing up in every corner of the body, and they quickly discontinued that program. So I mean, dentistry's got a long history of the oral systemic link.
No, and that's really interesting. I hadn't seen that study with the documented failures.
I just emailed you that thread. It's under. I just emailed it to you. It's under endo, but I was very surprised. Only one guy posted on that. And
Well, it's
and
because
of course, it was just typical. What I posted under endodontics, and this is not to throw my buddy Al under a bus, but amazing what he said. He said, I just sat through a lecture by John Kadimi that dealt with this subject. According to the work he quoted, it is very difficult to culture bacteria left over in and around the tooth following root canal treatment. They seem to reach a quiet phase when they are non-infective. Whether they can come out of this phase is anyone's guess. But okay, I don't remember in biology learning that life forms had a quiet phase when they are non-infective. I mean, it's just like I don't think anybody in endo even wants to think about this or believe it, but it's I think it's gonna get. I think the cardiologists, especially the Dr. Bale in Texas that we who wrote the book Beating the Heart Attack Gene, he thinks failing root canals are 70% of
that's a
acute.
pretty astounding figure right
I
there.
know it's an insane number. I mean, let's say he was 90% wrong and it was 7%. I mean that's the difference how we rearrange risk in our head. Like in my dental office in 30 years, if I killed someone every month, how many months would it take if I killed one person every month before the government shut me down?
Oh yeah, probably like 1 month.
But the Arizona Department of Transportation built the intersection of Ray Road and 48th Street where they put a 25-acre power center, Target, grocery store on all four corners, and someone dies in that intersection every month because the research is pretty clear. When you put a power center on all four corners, people are driving through the intersection trying to look for where that store is. But if you have two power centers, but the other side is like, say, apartments or residential, whatever, the mortality rate drops out. So the government can build an intersection that kills a person every month, and it'll just go on till the end of time and no one even looks at it. But if a dental office did it, so people have a very bizarre way of treating risk. You know what I mean? Like airplanes.
Absolutely.
Like everybody's
Absolutely.
afraid to fly an airplane, and you basically can't die in an airplane. But 30,000 Americans die in a car every year, and they all jump in their car and drive because they're afraid to fly.
Well, you're right. I mean, it's a warped risk assessment.
So, what are some common misperceptions about digital dentistry? Where you think these dentists got it are not seeing it right?
I think that the biggest is in my mind is that it's expensive, and I think that doctors can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and so you see if you're looking at CEREC, it's $140,000. Well, I don't think you and I are going to disagree that that's expensive. However, if you want to go digital, let's just talk impressioning. It's kind of the gateway drug to digital dentistry. Buy a scanner. You're looking at 15 to 20 grand as to what you can get into digital dentistry for. Yes, you've got an ongoing fee, but trust me, I've run the numbers. You may have to switch labs, but you're gonna save money each month if you go and just buy a scanner. You're gonna save chair time. You're gonna save, hard costs. You're comparing it to impression material, how much are you going to save? I can't tell you that, but I can tell you that you can get into digital dentistry very inexpensively, and so I think that that's a very common misperception that people have. So you touched on it earlier. You get into digital dentistry, you start ordering restorations, your lab's going to offer you a discount. That saves you money right there. You do 20 restorations a month, you save $10 to $15 a restoration. If you don't even switch labs, you save $10 to $15 a restoration. It just starts adding up. If I can get a digital restoration, $79, returned in 3 to 5 days. And
is that from Glidewell?
That's from Glidewell. And I will tell you that TechSource's pricing is very, very competitive as well. I think they have anywhere from 89 to probably for the higher end zirconias, the Lava Aesthetics is going to be pushing the 150 mark. I don't know that off the top of my head, but it's still less than I was paying before.
This is June 21, so basically 2 weeks ago, 6,000 kids just walked out of dental school. They just graduated. And when they listen to you talk about this stuff, they're going to say, I can't believe I had $350,000 in student loans and I didn't learn any of this and didn't place one implant. What would you, since podcasters are usually millennials, what would you tell her if she says, man, I'm already $250,000 in debt. I've never placed one. How do I go from 0 to 1? What would you tell her?
Placing implants?
Yeah. Or restoring. You don't place them, you restore them.
You store them.
And a lot of people argue about this. Some say that dental implants is a prosthetic art with a small surgical component, that the final restoration drives the implant placement. And then a lot of the oral surgeons say, I don't buy into that. I mean, you got to have your bone, and you place your implants, and you got to go from there. What would you say to someone who came out of dental school and they've never restored an implant? How would they get up to speed the fastest in diagnosing, treatment planning, and restoring dental implants?
I think the biggest thing is that when you get out of dental school, you have to find a mentor, and that's what I would suggest to them. If you're wanting to restore implants, then what you've got to do is you've got to learn as much as you can about the restorative components. And the first thing I would do is I would develop a relationship with a surgeon in the area that places the implants. I'd develop a relationship. I'd spend time in that surgeon's office. I'd watch that surgeon place implants, and I'd get to know the implant representatives for the various companies that surgeon uses. And restoring an implant's easy. I mean, you just got to take the leap of faith and do it. For instance, in this area, we use a lot of Straumann. So the first implant that I restored, I called the Straumann rep and said, hey, I've got this patient coming in, and that Straumann rep knows that if they help me, I'm going to help them as time goes on. I can be at your office that day, Dr. Duplantis. I can bring the necessary components. You only pay for what you need. Anything else we'll return. I'll go ahead and order everything. We'll have it right there in your office, and I'll walk you through it. I think that Straumann representative could have restored the implant that day better than I could have. So I think that, you need to find mentorship. It's going to be, the surgeon.
Okay, I'll stop you right there. I know my dentists. I know they're shy, they're introvert. They could have been a physics instructor, a chemist, a researcher. They're basically shy to go knock on an oral surgeon or periodontist doors. What percent of the periodontist oral surgeon would think in fear and scarcity and go away? You just refer them to me. That's my business. You just restore the crown. What percent do you think would think in hope, growth, and abundance to say, oh yeah, come on in. You can watch any surgery. If you got a job you're an associate somewhere and you don't work Wednesdays, you can come in here Wednesday. I usually place 5 a day. What percent of the periodontists and oral surgeons you think would be open arms?
The ones that I talk to in this area are actually really receptive to dentists wanting to place implants. They're receptive because they want them to do it the right way so that they don't have to fix their mistakes. But I think also it's all in how you teach them, and in what you teach them and what you share with them. It's kind of like doing endo, I mean, I feel very, very comfortable doing an endo on number 8. On number 15, not so much. I don't know if I really want to touch it. So I think that, I think a lot more surgeons than would be receptive to that. At least they are in this area. But, like I said, I don't place them, so I never test that side of their knowledge. I think I know how to place them, and I think I could place them. I just don't want to place them. So, I don't know how many of the dental schools are actually training students to place them these days. When I was in dental school, I placed 2. I graduated in '99. We placed Calcitech spline implants.
Calcitech spline?
Yeah.
Now I feel like the Star Wars guy when he said Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's like that's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
Yeah, and a lot of my classmates are placing them. But, if I could give any advice, if you're going to place them, you better make darn sure that you're trained well to place them. And if you're going to place them in your office, I would highly suggest for a general dentist to have a cone beam in the office, or at least have a cone beam on that patient. If if you get in a little trouble and you placed an implant and something went wrong, I would tell that general dentist you better hope that you have a cone beam that backs where you placed it and you can justify why you placed it where you placed it.
Yeah, well,
So
yeah.
that's what I would suggest.
Every malpractice company CEO I've talked to said if you just graduate from dental school before you retire, you will absolutely be sued once. I mean, that's just.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can't do dentistry for 30, 40 years moving forward. With the United States has 1 million attorneys, and attorneys have practice management seminars showing you how lucrative dentistry is. And so they go to weekend courses at the Holiday Inn learning how to get into the dental lawsuit business. Another interesting thing about implants, those two things have exploded in my 30 years, implants and Invisalign. And both of those have two things in common. The health insurance schemes like the NHS or PPOs, they're not setting the fee in implants and Invisalign. So a lot of times when you go to these big NHS offices in England, they're doing all the fillings and cleanings and x-rays pretty much at a loss. But if they pull out one implant and one Invisalign case a week, setting it at a market rate of what the market will bear as opposed to a predetermined fee set by the NHS, that's where they break even and pay all their bills and make money. I mean, I've seen some of the biggest welfare clinics in the world, but the reason they pay all their bills is because they pull out 50 implants and 50 Invisalign cases a month. So learning something that the fee is not set by a third party is always a good business to be in.
Very, very true. And I've found, and I don't know what you're seeing out there, but I've found that, when we first started restoring implants, the insurance companies wouldn't even look at them. It was just kind of, that's something that we don't touch. But I've found that the insurance companies in the United States have actually become a little bit more receptive as far as the restorations are concerned. I still find that a lot of them aren't covering the placement, so I'm told by the surgeon, but they are covering the restorations that we place on them.
So does your office participate in PPOs in Fort Worth?
We do not.
You don't take any PPOs?
No PPOs.
Wow. So that is a game of margin. I mean, there's so many offices that are signed up for, 8 to 12 PPOs. And some of these, you ask the dentist, well, what is your overhead? And they'll say 65%. And I'll say, okay, you're on 12 PPO plans. What you know what the average adjustment is off these 4 plans in your office? It's 48%. So if you're over at 65% and you're adjusting off 48% on these 4 plans, and so many consultants will tell you that when they go into offices that are on 12, 15, 18 plans, that they'll drop 4 or 5 plans and the dentist actually starts making more money because he doesn't realize he's taking profit dollars from fee for service and cash and some plans and then subsidizing other ones at a loss. It's amazing how the biggest crime in dental schools, they graduate and they can't balance their own check register at Chase or Bank of America. They can't do payroll on Quicken. They know zero accounting. And then they start signing all these contracts for all these insurance companies, and they don't read them. They didn't have one course in dental school where you actually read a PPO plan. And the American Dental Association has a service that all those PPO plans they've already analyzed. So all you got to do is call the ADA or email their department, and they'll give you a review of each one of those contracts. And when we got out of school in '87, you could make a lot of bad business mistakes and still be fine. But in this market, when you get out of school, it's not as forgiving. You have to make a lot of decisions right out of the gate, or you could set yourself back a decade.
No, I'd agree with that completely. I think we've been very fortunate that we don't participate in any PPOs or HMOs, and it works real well for our practice, and our patients are very receptive to it as well. But they're informed prior to ever coming in, and I think in telling a dentist who's thinking about leaving some of the PPOs is that if you position yourself appropriately and explain it appropriately and educate those patients, it's not as big of a leap to get out of them as you'd think it would be. If you've provided a loyal service.
So you're going to get your FAGD in July. Yep. Congratulations on that. There's a lot of people that just walked out of dental school who I doubt even know what the AGD is or what an FAGD. Tell us about your journey. Why did you join the AGD? Why was your FAGD important to you? And what would you tell the 25-year-olds about the AGD and getting your FAGD?
Well, I have kind of a interesting journey on that too. I joined the AGD, and obviously I'm a member of the ADA as well. But I found that the AGD is a little bit more education driven, and so as with many things in life, having the AGD and being able to record your hours, log your hours through them, be able to monitor that. It's an accountability thing. I'm able to look at it and say, gosh, I wish I had more hours right now, or and it's a great storing house for your hours, and they have a lot of great educational equipment out there. When I finished my residency, I think I got 150, 200 hours from my residency, and I had the opportunity to take the exam. And I didn't, because I was pretty much done taking exams and just wanted to practice dentistry at that point in time. And I wish I would have, because that would have been a lot easier to take the exam 17 years ago than take it now and have to learn how to study for an exam again. But yeah, I've had the hours for about 10 years, and it's just something that I've always wanted to do. And it was just kind of trying to find the time to study for it and take the exam. But I encourage every new graduate to join both the ADA and the AGD. I encourage them to keep up with their hours and take as many hours as they can. And I think that the fellowship is just another nice little notch on the wall, so to say, and another goal for them to achieve.
I think the number one variable I saw in my 30 years of watching kids come out of school and who was passionate, happy, healthy, loved dentistry, loved their career, versus no passion, burned out, hated it, only did it because you really can't make a dentist income doing, they usually don't have an idea. What would you do if they took your license away today? What would you do to make the money you do? It's so they're stuck in a rut. And if I had to pick the one variable, it was hours of continuing education.
Absolutely.
The dentists who took 100 hours a year, they were always excited and they were always passionate and they always had a mission and they always loved it. And then the ones who just took what they had to do to renew their license, they weren't smiling. They didn't look like they were happy and having fun. And the other thing is that when you're in the AGD and you're trying to get your fellowship, you're a summary of the 5 people you hang around the most with. You're always sitting there learning from the lecture, but then you're sitting there at break and at lunch, and all these guys are telling you all these things. And man, when you hang around with 5 people that are trying to get their fellowship in the Academy of General Dentistry, you're in the right crowd and you're going somewhere. You know what I mean?
And I would say, make it a race. Don't wait 17 years to get it like I did. Try and get it as quick as you can. I think you have to be practicing for 5 years before you can apply for it. And I had the hours within 5 years. I just didn't want to take the exam. So and I will say this: I think I learned so many more things, because when you follow a continuing education track, you tend to focus on the things that interest you the most. I learned a lot about pediatric dentistry and endodontics because those are courses that I really don't go to as often as I should. But I learned a lot, and I realized I had to dig deep in the memory bank to get through that exam, because each aspect of dentistry is covered. And I will also say that sleep dentistry, that wasn't even talked about when I was in dental school, but that's a part of the exam. So I learned a lot about that as well, and just studying for the exam. So the sooner you can get it, the better off you can be.
Your forefathers know so much more than you because they've been around the block. And I remember when I signed up for joining the AGD in 1987, I actually got into an argument with the Arizona guy over here, and he was about my age at the time. He was a grandpa, and I said, I was really upset because I had to take courses in implants and ortho. I said, I don't do implants and ortho. No, I don't want to do implants and ortho. I do fillings, crowns, cleanings, and I just want to take this other stuff, and I don't want to take that. And he just laughed. He just put his arm around me. He said, Howard, you know, you got to learn tools from every toolbox. You know, you got to learn, even though you're not going to do them, you'll be a better dentist because of it. So I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to knock this out. I'm just going to get out. So I found one course that I'd never heard of before, and it was 7 3-day weekends with Carl Misch in Pittsburgh. I mean, it
Hmm.
was like I discovered Australia because some wiser man said, you got to learn this stuff. It was love at first sight. I loved it. Same thing with ortho. I looked up the deal, and there's only 2 board certified orthodontists that actually taught general dentists. One was Richard Litt, and one was Harry Green. And I was all mad, and I didn't want to do it. But I mean, those are like 2 of my lifelong friends. And even though most people, most general dentists who learn ortho and start doing 4 or 5 cases, usually it fades away from their practice. I don't really know anybody who got into ortho. I would say 80% of dentists who learn how to do ortho after 2 or 3 years don't do it anymore, but they become much better diagnosing, treatment planning, know when, you know, you really need to get mom to intercept this case at the orthodontist. I mean, the knowledge is just unbelievable. But I want to say this. Back to the graduation class. How does a young kid find their passion? How do they find something that you're excited about? It seems like all the dentists that are really happy and healthy and loving dentistry, they got that one thing they're passionate about, which kind of gives them their mojo for all the other stuff in the office they really don't want to do. Like, I mean, who gets excited to sit down and do another MOD composite on a first molar? I mean, if you walk into that room all challenged and excited about it, I mean, God dang, after you've done 10,000, I can't wait till you can buy. Forget CAD CAM. I want Sirona to come out with a droid that, you know, I just send a little R2D2 into the room and it. But how do they find their passion so they get excited?
You know, that's that. You think that's an easy question to answer, and I think it's more it's a little bit more difficult to answer than you'd think. You know, you come out of dental school and you think you know everything, and you think you know a lot about everything, which is the majority of dental students. Um, and it took me about 5 years, but in those 5 years, you know, I tried to do a little bit of everything, and I tried to learn a little bit about everything. I think, you know, you've got to continue being a student. You don't just hang it up when they put that robe on you and tell you that you're a doctor now. You've got to you know, read the journals. You've got to study. You've got to you know, find someone in the dentistry in the industry that you want to follow, you know. um, and it just hits you. It's going to hit you when you find what you're passionate about. And it hit me in 2004, and I realized I was passionate about digital dentistry. I just didn't know how far I wanted to get into it, and I just kept on. And even when I gave up the CEREC, I knew I still liked digital dentistry. But at that point in time, I decided, okay, I'm going to go into this. You know, when I got CEREC because I thought that I was going to eliminate a lab bill, and I didn't. And that was a big misperception on my behalf. I'm not. I mean, if you go into digital dentistry thinking that you're going to be able to eliminate a lab bill, that's not going to happen. But I got into it for the wrong reasons. So when I got out of it in 2007, or you know, and started trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I wanted to go about it the right way. So I started to read, I started to learn, I started to study, and and you know, it just all of a sudden hit me. It's like, okay, this is the future of dentistry, and this is what I'm passionate about. And if they do enough of their homework and continue being a student to a certain extent, I think they're going to find what they're passionate about. They're going to find what they like doing in their practice, and they're going to find what they don't like doing in their practice. And I think, you know, the more you give to the things that you like doing in your practice, you're going to become passionate about it.
And you know, it's tough because all the greatest things in life don't come easy. I mean, it's not easy to get your FAGD, your black belt, your Eagle Scout, and none of those things are easy. But you know, when you're so young and you say like you hate molar endo, well, okay, I'm not saying you're 25 and got to do molar endo till you're 65, but you don't quit on molar endo after you've done 3 and say you hate it. You go take
Oh,
every course there is, and there's a chance that after you take 3 or 4 massive, awesome courses, and we have online continuums on, we have like 3 15, 20, 30 hour online continues on Dental Town by the greatest endo instructors ever. do all that, because maybe if you finally master that beast, you'll fall in love with it. And you know, same thing with so if something's hard, I mean, even Elon Musk says that when his view of starting a business was eating glass while staring into the abyss. He says that, you know, the eating glass part is doing things you don't like to do, and staring into the abyss is that, you know, most startup businesses all fail and go bankrupt. So when you're tackling endo or implants or ortho or sleep apnea or whatever, it's like eating glass staring into the abyss. But maybe you'll eat so much glass that the abyss turns into a detailed yellow brick road, and you fall in love with it. And
Well,
I also want to tell you, because you're coming up on this, I tripled my intelligence in just 3 years, and I don't even know how I did it. When my boy was 18, he thought I was the dumbest guy in the world, and then when he was 21, I was now the smartest guy in the world.
oh, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
so.
I am the dumbest guy in the world right now. So, but you know, molar endo is a perfect example as to what you said about finding your passion. You know, compare molar endo to digital dentistry for a second. I hated molar endo until I found an efficient system that I use in my office to do molar endo. And now it's not my favorite thing to do, but I certainly don't shy away from it because I found an efficient way of doing it in my office and a system that I really, really like. Now, digital dentistry, did I ever think that I would be passionate about taking impressions? No way. You know, and that's where it started. You know, who would have ever thought that impression taking could be fun? No, it was an efficient way to take impressions that led to other things that made it fun. So, you know, trying to find office efficiency and practice efficiency in something that you're good at, that's the tough part.
But hey, buddy, I can't believe the hour is already gone. But you forced an overtime, because you just said the last thing you said is you found an endo system that was fast and efficient. So you can't leave that hanging out there. Now you're gonna have to go into overtime and explain to my homies what endo system you're talking about.
TF Adaptive,
Adaptive, and who?
Cybron Endo.
Okay, Cybron Endo, owned by Kerr,
Yeah,
which is owned by
and
Danaher. So Danaher, Kerr, Cybron Endo.
and I started using it and I absolutely love it. I love the handpiece. I love the file system. It's quick, it's efficient. The obturation is easy. Um, you know, I will say another piece of advice is that if you find something that you like and it's a little bit more expensive than what you didn't like, then you know what you do? You increase your fees. You make it worth your while to do it. There's an easy way to do it. You know, you got to increase them within reason, but you got to be able to make money off of things too. So,
I know. So I live in a big metro like you do. You're in the Dallas Fort Worth. By the way, where's the Cowboy Stadium? Is it in Fort Worth or is
it's
it
in
in Arlington?
Arlington.
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 And
Yeah.
so we've got, you know, out here in Phoenix, it's a 3.8 million metro. To drive from the furthest southwest corner of Queen Creek to the farthest northeast corner of Sun City on an interstate going 70 miles an hour would take you an hour.
Sure.
So we have the big denture world factories where they're advertising complete dentures for $199 and this and that, and for the last 30 years, every once in a while, I can't stand dentures. I mean, and they'll say, well, I charge $1,500 an arch for a denture, and they'll say, well, I can go to Denture World, get them for $199. I'm like, Grandma, I will personally drive you there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll call an Uber. I'll call a limo. I'd rather pay a limo to take you to Denture World than do a damn denture for $199. I mean, and those guys, when you go in there, I mean, that's all they do. They got their lab man. They take a mush bite. They got it 3 steps. And that's the other thing these young kids got to realize, that if you are making 5 dentures a day, you are the best denture maker in all of Arizona. And what I have noticed in the last 30 years is that if you don't do a procedure 1 time a week, so I don't care if it's crowns, dentures, implants, Invisalign, if you don't do the case once a week, you never get faster, easier, higher quality, lower price, and profitable. And furthermore, if you needed a surgery, let's say you needed some organ worked on, would you want to go to a guy that does it once a month?
No.
Or would you want to find the guy who makes 5 dentures a day at Denture World? And as crazy as that sounds, they make really good dentures with the Mush Bite, the Lab Man, because god dang, they make a gazillion of them. And so if you're going to get passionate about something, remember, like Shark Tank. How many times does Mark Cuban, who I love, who lives in your backyard, says, I'm sorry, Chad, but you're not describing a business, you're describing a hobby, okay? So go play and have fun. When you're not doing a procedure once a week, it is a hobby, and you're probably losing money on it. And that's all cool if that's what makes you run 20 red lights on the way to work. You know, I don't want you burned out and fried. So, like when people say, should I buy a hard tissue laser? Well, I'd say, well, I think a pedodontist would have to. I mean, because you wouldn't, the time it takes to give a shot and wait for it to numb up, you could have done the filling on tooth. But more importantly than anything is, does buying a laser sound like the coolest damn thing you could ever do, and it'd make your eyes sparkle and run to work? Then you have to buy a laser. But don't sit there and say that you have to have a laser for any other reason. You know, but try to stick with things that you do once a week.
I think that's great advice for anybody in dentistry, especially the new ones coming out, the millennials.
Yeah, absolutely. And all right, well, man, I could listen to you all day long. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I was so excited when you replied and said you'd come on the show. Love your energy, love your passion. Good luck with Austin and Ava, and I'm sure that's the most fun you'll ever have. And on that note, I hope you have a rocking hot day.
All right, man.
And,
hey, thanks,
I want to beg for one request from you.
Yes.
One request. My God, that article where you were talking about where you were talking about you were working with co-diagnostics, dental wings, Texors, periodontists, yourself. God dang, I wish you'd write that up for an article in Dental Time Magazine, because it'd be worth your time, because Dental Time Magazine goes to 125,000 people, but we email it digitally to more than that. And then on Dental Town, there's 250,000 dentists, and we started this share function where these people write the article for free, but if you read the article and you like it, you can just share it to your Facebook, your Twitter, your LinkedIn. And we just started that a few months ago, and it has really taken on. I mean, sometimes people do an article and it'll be shared 250 times on Facebook, and how many dentists do you think the average dentist on Facebook has following?
Oh, I have no idea.
I mean, I'm sure it's well over 100, but so if you wrote it, if you got all those people to write it, I mean, it'll be read in 220 countries. I can guarantee you that. I
will get you an article.
Really? That's because that's when you talked about Texors dental wings, when you talked about the whole thing, I bet 99% of the people listening to you had never even heard of it like that.
No, I'm happy to. We'll do it.
All right, buddy. I'm going to hold you to it, and if not, I'm going to have the Arizona Cardinals kick them Cowboys' butts every time they meet.
Hey, I won't let that happen.
Speaking about rare things, it's about every 10 years where a starting quarterback in the NFL goes down and the backup is better. How weird was that for the Cowboys to have that quarterback, and then he's injured, and the backup, now no one even wants your starter back.
Hey, you talk about quarterbacks and backup. I'm going to throw a hot tip out there. Trevor Knight, who y'all just signed in Arizona, his dad was my mentor in dental school. He's an incredible dentist, taught at the school in San Antonio. You need to get him on for your podcast, and that would light things up. My God, send me an email, howard@dentaltown.com. Email him. I'll do it. That sounds like a blast. His son is a NFL football player? Yeah, his son was the quarterback for Oklahoma. Then he played for Texas A&M, and he just got signed by the Cardinals. He's actually out there right now. Trevor Knight is his name, and his dad is George Knight. He's a dentist out of San Antonio.
Wow.
Wonderful man, and an incredible dentist as well.
And on that note, I don't know if you caught this, but we just did a podcast with Conquering Your Adversities by Kenneth J. Polk, who was the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns and the Miami Dolphins, and says he's the only dentist ever to be the quarterback on 2 different NFL football teams, the Dolphins and the Cleveland Browns. And it was called Conquering Your Adversities. He's retired now. He quit practicing about 2 or 3 years ago and is now just consulting, speaking, but my God, that was a cool story. And basically, he credits being a dentist. He grew up in a really wrong part of town and was into all kinds of trouble, and you know, getting good grades and trying to get into dentistry and football and all that stuff is what kept him out of trouble. But he calls it conquering your adversities because he said he was born on the wrong side of the railroad tracks. But you got to listen to that and send that to that dentist you're talking about. And so that'd be a great follow up to Kenneth Polk.
I will, and we'll go start eating some glass.
All right. Have a rocking hot day, buddy. Thanks
Hey,
so
thanks,
much.
man. I enjoyed it.